Here's what you're missing over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, patrons, and welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we have something, we have a treat for you guys, I think, especially those over a certain age who came to Gettysburg years ago at the old visitor center, when you got to go in and see something that was state of the art in 1963 and carried well into what, the 2000s or 90? When that? Yeah, I mean, till they built the new visitor center, right? So 2008ish, and that is the electric map. The first time I came here was on a field trip, senior year of high school, and we went right into the visitor center, looked around, and we went and sat around the electric map, and I found it to be a very useful tool for learning the geography and the battle lines and all that other stuff. And then it went away. And what a sad day it was for a lot of people, because, you know, nostalgia is a thing that it's very hard to let go of things that you have fond memories of. But luckily, it is currently intact and visible, or not visible, but able for you to see in Hanover, Pennsylvania. And we have Marc Charisse with us. Marc, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Good. And Marc, now you're the owner of it?
Well, the owner is a guy named Scott Rowland. He's a Hanover businessman.
All right.
And I'm his map curator, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay. And we went, I don't remember when that was. I think it was November when we went out there, and you showed it to us, and you gave us a good history of the map, and then the coolest thing was the show itself, because you had a recording of, who was it? It was a Rosenstiel. Who was that in the recording that's narrating it?
Right, that was Rosenstiel himself, the man who built the map.
What was his first name? Was that John?
John Rosenstiel.
John, okay. So John Rosenstiel, and we'll get into that in a second. But first, give us a little history of how you guys got this and put it back together again.
Sure. I was the editor of the Evening Sun, a newspaper in Hanover. And by the way, that was Joe Rosenstiel. It's a little early in the morning for me. John Rosenstiel, and there's a John, and there's a George, and there's a Joe. And so the Rosenstiel family is it's hard to keep the history straight.
I know.
And I did a lot of work on that, and that's one of the things that we're very proud of. We've really put together a history of the map and how it came to be, and which I think is something that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Well, because I remember when we got in there, I thought, we're going to go in and it's like, all right, here's the map, and then lights out, turn it on, and you do the thing. But it was a full half hour of history probably before we actually got to see the map, and I thought it was fascinating. Tell us some of the statistics about the map itself, size and what it's made of and all that.
Got it. The map's about 30 feet square. 1 inch equals 200 feet on the map, so that's a pretty huge scale if you stop to think about it.
Yeah.
There are 672 little colored lights on it. Frankly, I've never counted them. I always lose count around 200, but that's what they tell us.
Okay.
And the map, the way it is now, I mean, if you remember seeing it on the battlefield, you saw it with the stadium seating. You couldn't get up that close to it, really. People can get a lot closer to it now, and one of the really interesting things that for me is that you can kind of see how the thing was built. All those lights were originally from Christmas trees. You can tell because they had the red and the green wire coming off them. Uh-huh. You could see how he built the map. If you look closely, there are nails all over the map, pounded in at different heights, which gives you its contours. A lot of people think that map is made out of fiberglass or something, chicken wire. It is solid wall plaster.
So how heavy is that?
Well, it's cut into, the estimate is somewhere between 15 to 20 tons.
Tons?
Tons.
Jesus.
The map, when it was removed from the old visitor center, was cut into 4 slabs, and each of those slabs weighs somewhere between 5,000 and 7,500 pounds.
So, okay, they cut it up to remove it. Now, where does it go first?
Well, the interesting thing for me is that was a big mystery, and I say that as an ex-newspaper man. When they cut the map, when they sawed it into those 4 pieces, they didn't realize it at the time, but they soon learned that Joe Rosenstiel had used asbestos fiber to strengthen his top coat, and so they created quite a hazmat situation up there on Cemetery Hill. And being the government, they didn't really want to address this issue, so they sort of spirited the map away. And we had a reporter call asking what happened to the map. The reporter was told it was being held in an unspecified location, which is red meat to any journalist looking for a story to what's going on there.
Right.
It was at the Kinsley truck yard on 83 between York and Harrisburg.
So and how long did it stay in storage in that unspecified location?
For a couple of years, actually. The Park Service was sort of hoping people would forget about the map, that it would just kind of go away, but it didn't. Yeah, the local paper here, our paper, the National Civil War Press, the Civil War Times.
Sure.
Everybody was like, so what happened to the electric map? It became this sort of, rallying cry. We want the map.
Right. People loved it.
Exactly. Now,
we should mention, you've mentioned the newspapers, and you're a newspaper man. You were the editor of the Hanover Evening Sun.
Correct.
For how many years?
From 2005 to 2013, so 8 years.
Okay, and so this was removed during your tenure there, and so it was your reporters who were on the case.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
And now, I'm sorry. What did you say the name of the owner is?
Scott Rowland.
Scott Rowland. How did he get a hold of it?
Well, he read our newspaper and had been following this map controversy, and finally, it was really, I think, about getting people to just walk away from it. The Park Service announced that they would sell it to the highest bidder, sight unseen. Remember, they wouldn't even tell you where it was. And if no one bid on it, then it was going to the landfill, and I think that's what they expected would happen. Scott called me and he said, gee, what do you think? Should we buy the map? And I at first tried to talk him out of it, frankly. This is not, I pointed out, this isn't Gettysburg. We were in Hanover.
Right.
But he had a building, and he had he had a desire to bring something interesting that would bring visitors to Hanover. And we looked at it that way, that maybe it could be the centerpiece of a heritage center. Hanover has its own cavalry battle.
That's right.
We started thinking about other ways we could, the synergies of maybe we could have a little Hanover map to go with it.
That would have been cool.
And some other things. You bet.
So now the building that it's in is what, an old bank?
Yeah, it's an old bank.
Yeah.
There's no stairs in there. I mean, there's no elevator in there. So the map is up on the second floor, and that's proved to be a real barrier to try to market it.
Yeah.
A lot of tour groups have been interested in bringing tours by. When they find out there's no elevator, no, they're not interested anymore. So
that's a shame. So it's a huge room. It was probably, does the room take up the whole second floor essentially?
Pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And how did they get it up there? Being that each slab was 5,000 pounds, how did they get them
through one of the windows up there? And
really,
we have photographs of it being brought up on piece by piece on a crane, which is also how we know the weight, because the crane operator needs to know how much weight he's got up in the air.
Yeah. So they get cranes up through the window. Now, once it's in the window, though, it's not like you got 5 college guys carrying it, right? I mean, it's still 5,000 pounds.
Well, it looked like, imagine, if you will, swing sets on wheels, like the frame, an A-frame of a swing set.
Yeah.
And they were maybe 3 feet, 4 feet off the ground, so that they would bring it in and set it on those, and then they would bring it, and then those things had like a hydraulic system. They could then lower it, and it was lowered onto cinder blocks. Scott Rowland had originally been in the electrical connector business, so he undertook to rewire the map himself.
Now, the rewiring. You said that originally it was Christmas lights that they used for the wiring and the lights, right?
Right.
But that's not what they are now.
No, they're LED lights today. They use a lot less energy, obviously. In fact, one of the things we found when we brought the map up there, it appears that there was a place where they could put 4 car batteries that they used when they needed the extra juice to get all those lights on, I guess. But today, of course, you could probably just plug it into a regular wall socket. It wouldn't take much more than that.
So it's on the floor. When you have to get in there and fix something underneath, what do you have to do? Have you had to since you've had it?
So far, we've only had like 1 or 2 lights burn out.
Okay.
So lucky for us. You can walk on it, as I say.
Right.
It's solid, so it will easily hold an adult's weight up on top. And the way to do that would be to with a fishing pole, basically, from the side to the top. And you can pull the wire. You can get the wire and pull it out and repair it, and then push it back in.
Oh wow!
Not something I'd want to try.
No,
but,
I would get very frustrated with that.
The electricians tell us that's the way to do it.
Okay, so now in the old days, if they needed to turn the light on to demonstrate, whatever the narrator's talking about, I guess originally someone would have to stand there and flip a switch. Is that right?
Right. Originally, it was all set up on individual switches. And in fact, if you listen, we have the original 1963 recording of Joe Rosensteel giving his map show. And if you listen in the background, you can definitely hear the click, 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 click.
Yeah.
And then Pickett's men came over the rise. There's this big dramatic pause, and you hear chick, 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 chick. I always thought he was just dramatically pausing. No, he was pausing because he had to turn the lights on.
So at some point, did the Park Service automate that?
The Park Service went to a recording and an automation in the mid-1970s when they bought that building from the Rosensteel family.
And now, though, it's a computer, right?
Right. Now we have a computer that times the lights to the narration.
Okay.
So while that sounds high tech, it's actually a bit lower tech because we can't control the individual lights anymore. They fire off in a certain sequence.
But now, how did you? Is there a computer software that's made for that, or did you have to have somebody develop that?
There was software that was adaptable to that. I don't know if that was its original.
Oh, that's interesting. And so it's just a laptop that you're running off of now.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it's amazing how technology has come in such a short amount of time. There are some inaccuracies, though, correct?
There are a few, I think, in terms of the narration.
The narration,
itself,
that's what I meant.
Right.
Yeah.
The Rosensteel spends a lot of time talking about East Cavalry Field.
Yeah. And
the idea that Jeb Stuart and Robert E. Lee had worked this out as part of some kind of grand design.
Yeah.
I don't know many historians would buy into that today.
No.
Surprisingly, and again, this goes back to 1963. I'm surprised that nowhere in the narration does he mention either John Burns or Jenny Wade. I mean, it's hard to imagine a Gettysburg tour without those two civilians in it somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. He didn't mention either one of those.
And, he mentions Abner Doubleday, who we don't really think invented baseball after all. So I'd probably stick John Burns in there instead of Doubleday. Doubleday.
Now the tape that you have, was it just like somebody had a tape recorder in the room, or was this something that I guess this is the question. Did he record that to be played over and over again, or was someone recording the show without his knowledge?
It was recorded that recording came from the Park Service.
Oh, okay.
So my sense is it was recorded just to mark the historical.
Listen to the rest of this interview and dozens like it. Support the show and get early access to special episodes, early and discounted ticket sales, and more. The second lieutenant level and above gets access to all monthly Patreon episodes. So please go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg, choose a tier, and join. And I thank you in advance.